What is up, everybody? So it's finally happened. Well, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but it's happened. Zappiti is no longer with us. Rest in peace, Zappiti. Now, for you that don't know what Zappiti is a file player for your home theater. So you can have a little box and a hard drive, and you put a bunch of movies in there, and you get them through one or a number of different means, whether legally or illegally, but you end up with these files. Typically, people will rip DVDs and Blu-rays and 4Ks and put these out on a NAS or a local hard drive attached to a Zappiti device. And then you have a really nice UI that is very Clive Escape-esque. And then you can watch these in your theater, right? You don't have to pull out a disc, right? It's really handy. You can be creative with the artwork for your movies, and you can create collections, all kinds of stuff. And it's kind of a fun system to have in place. But the sad news is that the system is no longer in place because they are going out of business. Now, my understanding is that they will be completely out of business by December, and all of their cloud-hosted server stuff will be gone. They will not be paying for that to be available for folks. Um, Now, what does this mean? Well, it means for the most part, people need to find an alternative method of playing back their files or some other strategy for watching movies. And tonight, so Michael Andrew asks, nobody bought them out? Not that I'm aware of. There's no news of them being bought out. I will talk a little bit about what I think part of their strategy is in a little bit, but no, they are, as far as I know, going out of business. So, what does this mean for everybody? Well, you need a new strategy to watch either the content that you have, meaning your files, or you need some other type of strategy. There's a bug, or you need some other type of strategy to watch content. And that is what tonight's episode is about. We're going to talk about a number of different ways. I think I called out 8 in the thumbnail, but I think we'll have a few more than that. Different strategies that you can use to continue to consume your content, or find an alternative way to consume content if you think this might be the time to get off of the ripped file kind of train. All right, now, if you have questions, please feel free to drop those into the comments, and I will answer those as we go along. I've been following along with not only these types of file players, but also physical media for quite a while. And the market is really changing right now. You're seeing a sea change of things shifting from what I could call a traditional model, which is physical media, DVDs, Blu-ray, 4K. The transitory period is like, okay, people are ripping these things. And now you're into the current world of tons of streaming and Clive Escape, which is, I guess, the new version of what Zappiti has been doing. Now, if you remember, Clive Escape got into a lot of trouble when they were following a model that Zappiti has been following, meaning that in the past, Clive Escape was, okay, let's rip stuff and then you can watch it. And they went bankrupt, and they had all their woes, and then they rebuilt their entire business on a different model. And I think that's the same kind of thing that's happened to Zappiti, because if you've been following along, they had stuff for sale, and then they had their NAS that did ripping came out, and then they couldn't sell that in the United States, and now next thing you know, they're out of business altogether. So I think the pitfalls of that business model impacted them, and it could impact others as well. So that's something to be cognizant of as you decide what you want to use. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump in now and talk about different ways that you can consume content, whether it's with files or not. And we're going to start out with the ones that I think will be less popular, and then move through to some more popular ones that I think might be a little bit more digestible for people. So first up, we've got streaming. And I know that is not an answer that most of you want to hear at all. But streaming is something to consider. And there's like a billion different streaming services. Of course, people will say, well, that's part of the problem. And I agree. It's a very fragmented market right now. But there will be consolidation that happens over time. And you'll see these things merge together. Content will move around. And there's a lot of downsides to the streaming, model, but there are a lot of upsides as well. You don't own the content, meaning that you pay a monthly subscription and whatever they show is what you can watch. And if they want to change the content, they can do that too. Whereas if you've got a physical disc or a ripped file sitting at your house, that nobody can do anything with that, right? It's yours. You've got it there. Um, Streaming content is nice though, because you don't have to have all of the infrastructure sitting around, and you don't have to maintain some type of front end GUI device. You don't have to have all the stuff, right? You just pay your money and you watch your shows and you can enjoy it. And for the non collector and the non enthusiast, that's likely a really good way to go. But if you are an enthusiast, then probably not the right solution for you. So we're going to move on down the list of things that you can do to watch your files. All right, now next up is a home theater PC. Now this is a high level of effort solution, right? And I don't necessarily recommend that anybody go down this path unless you just really like pain. It is a way to host server software, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And you could also just use it with a video player and point it toward a file that's sitting on a hard drive somewhere, a NAS or local disk or a USB stick, and watch things that way as well. Now, you don't have all of the cool UI if you don't have some kind of server software that does that for you. But you can get access to all of those files. Zappiti doesn't do anything magical to the files to make them disappear or go away, right? They are available, right? You can still use them with a number of different pieces of equipment, right? Because they're MKVs or MOV files or MP4s or whatever you might have ripped to. Hopefully they're lossless MKVs that have all of the quality there. That's the way I would do it if I were doing it. And that's the way that I did do it in the past. But building a home theater PC is likely the most painful and potentially most expensive way, although some of the boxed players out there are really expensive now. But that's a solution. I don't know if it's a good solution, but we're going to move on from there to something that might be better. Okay, here's Clive Escape. I told you I was going to list all the things that might not be super palatable to everyone. And Clive Escape, that's what I use. When I jumped out of the ripping your movie scenario, I moved to this format because I had discs and I wanted to be able to leverage that investment to a certain extent. And you could take the discs and upload them not upload them, but you can put them into a Clive Escape box and it'll say, oh, you bought the disc, so we'll sell you the digital copy for cheap, that kind of thing. It doesn't rip though, right? That's the distinction between Clive Escape and any of the others, the Zappiti, the Zudus, the Dunes, etc. Right? They have to rip the disk to a file. Well, the Clive Escape, the only disk interaction you have is to say, "Hey, I own this," so that you can buy a digital copy, not a stream, a copy that you can download to your server at a lower price. So it is an option, and it's probably the highest quality option. Although for most folks, you won't really be able to tell the difference between 4K disc and Clive Escape. Now, this next one is kind of interesting. We have a question here. So, what happened to Modulus? Modulus is still out there. I have contacted them a number of times to see if I could get them to let me borrow a unit so I can create a review video, or just see that it exists outside of a trade show. They've come back and said, "Oh yeah, we could totally do that," a couple of times, but it's never made it across the finish line. So, to a certain extent, Modulus to me is kind of vaporware. I mean, it exists, but I think they're working more in the commercial space. I could be wrong about this because I've never actually had one, but I think they're looking for multi-unit kind of stuff. Like they want to have a Modulus system in prisons where you can watch it in a bunch of different cells, or in hospitals where you have a TV in each room, or in hotels where they put a screen in each room, right? And you have a Modulus kind of system hanging out. So I think that's what they are more focused on. Now, Modulus has a lot of interesting scenarios where it can record streamed content and stuff like that. And I don't know the in and outs of that. They say it's all on the up and up, and I believe them. But at this point, I've never actually gotten my hands on Modulus. I would love to. I think it is a piece of hardware that has potential. So if anybody has a contact that can, get some leverage, let them know. I'll make some review content and show the world what's going on with Modulus. I know they have a couple of different models now. One's more expensive than the other, but it is still out there, Bjorn. So it's the thing. Michael Andrew says K-scape is voodoo for the rich. No. Not really. So you can spend a lot of money on Kaleidoscape if you want to. And I was just talking to some folks about this earlier today, but you can get into Kaleidoscape for not much more money than a lot of people spend on Zappitis and Zudus and that kind of stuff, right? So like if you go to eBay and look for a Strato S used unit, they're like $4,200 or something. And you see people spending, a $1,500 on a top of the line Zudu, and then another $1,500 on a NAS, and you're $3,000 in right there. So it's a little bit more, but it's not super duper more. All right, now this one I think is interesting, and I don't know all the scuttlebutt about this on the back end, but Magnetar. Now I'm about to do a Magnetar, the 800 series model review video, which is a really awesome Blu-ray player. And I think Magnetars are being sold by the same distribution folks. And please correct me if I'm wrong about this, everybody, by the same distribution folks that were selling Zappiti, which is interesting, right? So maybe this is how the folks behind Zappiti live on, right, with the Magnetar Blu-ray player brand. But these are likely some of the best Blu-ray players out there. In my experience so far, I prefer this more than my Panasonic Blu-ray player. Now, it doesn't have the tone mapping bells and whistles like the Panasonic does, but it does a really nice job of playing back the content on disc. And I haven't experienced a lot of issues with that playback yet. So I'm really excited for the Magnetar brand. And this is an option, right, for folks. So if your Zappiti goes away and you need a way to play your discs, right, this will do it because you ripped your files from your discs, right, and you didn't download them, hopefully. So this is an alternative way to do that. All right, we will move on now to the next item here. And this, I think, is likely to be the most common alternative for people, and that is the Plex. Right now, Plex has been around for a very long time. I've had a Plex Pass since the very beginning, and God, it's got to be 10, 15 years or something. I mean, they've been out there forever, and they started out purely as a server to play back files, and you'd have to build your own hardware in one way or another to do that. Now, today they are really rebranding, and if you look, I've got their website up, and you can see that their title here, and this is what, when you go there, this is the first thing you see: meet your TV concierge, start streaming. Right? It doesn't say install your server and watch your files. They are calling out streaming. So they are all in on becoming the tool that you use to manage your streaming experience. Now, does that mean that is going to be the strategy that overtakes the Plex philosophy down the line? I don't know, but they definitely have pivoted in this age of streaming from purely Plex server. Now they still have a right here at the top, your media, right? So you can get Plex Media Server, and it's right here. And I've got Plex Media Server running here at my home. I don't actually have any files or anything out there; just have it in case I need to test something. And then some people will use Plex not for commercial content, but they want a server for their home videos and that kind of stuff. A lot of people have terabytes and terabytes of video of their grandkids and that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of different use cases for this, but you can still use Plex just like you did in the past to play back files, right? And now the question is, what are you going to play this stuff back on? This next item is what most people will typically use for Plex, and that is the Nvidia Shield. and let's not allow those push notifications. And I love the Nvidia Shield. This is one of my favorite pieces of hardware. And I've got two favorite pieces of hardware for consuming content. Well, I guess three now. So my go-tos are the Nvidia Shield, the Pro, not the basic, not the tube. Don't get the tube. I've got a tube and I never use the tube. Get the Pro, and you can use that to stream. You can also use it to run Plex server. My other piece of hardware, of course, is my Clive Escape, which I love, and then the Magnetar disc spinner. Right, so those are my three go-tos right now, and for me, that covers everything that I could ever possibly want, from files to physical media to streaming. Now, the Plex and Nvidia Shield can be replaced by Apple TV. Apple TV does a fine job. It does not do Plex server though. So if you're an Apple TV person, there's something called Infuse, and we'll get to that. I am not an expert on Infuse, but we will talk to that a bit here a bit later. But highly, highly recommend Shield if you want to go down the Plex line. But a lot of people went to Zappiti because they wanted to get away from Plex. Now, for those folks, we have some options. All right, Dune. Dune Player. Dune's been around forever and a day as well. It's been here a long time. And I haven't owned a Dune. I don't know that I ever actually did own a Dune ever. But they do everything, and you can buy one that costs $1,500 if you want the Dune HD Ultra Vision 4K. But there are lots of different players, right? There's even a Homatics version of Dune, and that's Homatics for people in the United States. Is a very popular brand outside of the U.S. And they make all kinds of stuff. But this is another option, and I think a lot of people will use Dune. Not with Plex, but with other servers, whatever XBMC became. That's how, yeah, I know I'm taking it real old school there. But it looks like it's got Dolby Vision and it's got all the bells and whistles, right? So this is an option if you want to have a physical box that is dedicated to playing back files like your Zappiti was in the past. All right, a couple of comments here. Jack Herbert, welcome, Jack. Thanks for watching. Nvidia Shield still the best for Plex. I like it too. Absolutely. Peen, welcome, Peen. You're my favorite, Peen. I recently purchased the Dune. Definitely some nice options out there for those willing to do the research. I agree. And those are the two that we're going to talk about here. Just been talking about Dune. We'll get to Zudu in a minute. And Zudu, they've been just it might be Zudu that actually was the nail in the coffin for Zappiti because they've been doing such a good job. Mia says, I can very easily tell the difference between a movie on Vudu versus disc, while the difference from disc to Kscape can be less significant. They do exist. I agree. Kscape can be slightly better than disc, although I think for most folks, it will be the same experience from a viewing experience, right? And now, I don't have any inside information. I wish I did, but Clive Escape just refreshed their server line, so they've introduced SSD storage and that kind of stuff. And I have a feeling, and I want to sing now. I gotta feel it. Okay, I have a feeling that they're going to refresh their player line, and I would be willing to put money down that they are going to add Dolby Vision, because one of my big predictions for the future of home theater is the migration from projection to panel style wall televisions, right? And you saw these all over Cedia. And I have a Instagram video of one of them from Barco Residential with TPI sound that's like at 1.2 million views now. This is the way of the future, right? And these will all be able to play Dolby Vision content, whereas most projectors, it's not really, Dolby Vision is not really a thing. You're seeing Dolby Vision, so to speak, in some USTs now, but it's not really a thing. And Clive Escape is, they were very in the home theater, high-end projection kind of market, and it just wasn't a needed feature. However, I think over time, starting a year ago, it is a very needed feature. So my prediction is that you'll see that. And then the quality between Voodoo versus Disc, I agree. Disc is going to be a good bit better there uh, than the uh, uh, than the Voodoo version, and that's my experience. Jack says, I believe that Magnetar and Rivian 4K Blu-rayers were distributed by the Zappiti folks. Yes, so I agree. That's my understanding as well. So hopefully, the folks there, and they're really great people, have a path forward. Right? There's some way for them to move into the future using different technology, different products, and I think that's going to be it. So I tend to agree with you. Um, and then the need for quality playback. Mia, again, thank you for joining. Is important, especially because file qualities matter, and that is highly dependent on your system. Yes, I agree. We got to have the quality. Um, and then comment on home theater PCs. She's constantly upgraded it because her Kscape works fine. Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. Kscape hardware, you've bought it and it just kind of does what it does, right? And it works. Whereas with home theater PCs, there's always new hardware for optimization and upgrades, and that can be costly and over time adds up to a lot. So, I'm using my Clive Escape Strato S. It's the combined server storage with the player from, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago or something like that, whenever they first came out. And it works great, right? I mean, it's just as good today as it was when I bought it. So there's definitely lasting value there. And then Jack says, before we move on, one last comment here. If Kscape adds Dolby Vision, I am in. I think it's going to happen. Cross your fingers, but don't hold your breath, right? Kind of thing. But I do think that it's gonna happen at some point, and I think now is the fusion point for it, especially with the continued rise of the wall style display, right? And man, just video walls at CD, those guys were killing it. I mean, they have a 40 grand wall that is absolutely beautiful, and that same wall just a couple of years ago been $2,000 or something. So one of these days, these humongous walls, and I think a wall becomes feasible at the 120-inch and higher kind of situation. Up to 100-inch, you do single panel, right? And you see that with a lot of TVs today are available. Hisense, they have their new, what is it, U8 100 or something coming out. That's going to be like $5,000. So you can get in for $5,000 on a really great panel with great blacks, at a reasonable cost. So the panels you need to be 120 and bigger, and you'll be able to do scope kind of aspect ratios and that kind of stuff. Whereas in televisions, you're usually stuck at 16:9. So the rise of the screen, wall screen, is coming. All right, now moving on from Dune and my long diatribe there, Zudu, and this is, I think, likely the most interesting, viable competitor to Zappiti out there. However, when you go to shop.zudu.tv, they don't even have their boxes available for purchase. You can buy a remote control, and you can buy their Ever Solo stuff if you want to, but they're not there, right? You can go to the Chinese webpage and look at all the products, but they are not here on this sales site for the United States. So that makes me a little curious and a little concerned. If anybody has any comments about that, I would be really interested in understanding if there's something going on that I don't know about with Zudu as well. I mean, remote controls are nice and all, but yeah, I don't know. I will say that they're just killing it with the Eversolo stuff. This DMP A6, this thing is baller, and the DAC Z6, I think, I mean, it's just all so good. I mean, just so good, so nice, super popular. And I haven't had an opportunity to touch an Eversolo yet, but it's definitely on my list of things to take a look at. But I am curious why it's not on their sales site here for us. Now, I have a Z9X, I think it is, and I think there's a Z9X Pro, and I think I'm saying the model number correctly there. And so I've used theirs, and they're all Dolby Vision and everything, and they're really nice. And I had absolutely no issues with it, and I thought they were great players, did a really great job. Um, so if you want a replacement that is the analog, I mean the same thing basically that you had before, I think Zudu probably is going to be the closest product for you, where you can just buy it and use it in the same way. Now, a lot of people are looking for a migration path. What do I do with my hard drives that I have stuck in my Zappiti? Well, you could pull them out and you can shove them into a Zudu for sure. It'll read them. Now it has to index all your stuff and create all the art and all that kind of thing. And I don't know if any of that content, like if you got special images, you get your custom stuff. I don't know if you can bring that over or not, or how easy that might be, or somebody will write a piece of software that'll help with that. I don't know. But I do know that you could still use those same files. There's no reason. All the file types are all universal, right? So you can definitely use those to play that content. All right. Now, the next one is Infuse. And this is really iOS Apple specific, right? And I don't know a lot about this one. But as the day went by today and I chatted with people about options to replace Zappiti, everybody's like, don't forget about Infuse. And I'm all like, what the heck is Infuse? Because I've not been living in a Apple world to play back my files, right? I just haven't. So if you know about Infuse, feel free to comment below. But I did want to make a point of calling this out so that folks that are in the Apple ecosystem will have something to look at, right? So you can just go look this up in case you don't know about it and you need to know about it. And if anybody has any comments about it, please drop those down below. And let's see if there are any more comments here. Mocha Foxes. What's up, Mocha Foxes? Hi to you too. And then Mocha Foxes sends a fox. I like it. I'm down with that. Jay Black says, in his opinion, Clive Escape is worth the dollars to save time on the upkeep. I agree. I think it's worth the dollars too. And remember, you don't have to spend $30,000 to get started with Clive Escape. You can spend $4,000 and be ready to rock and roll. And then we've got Bry C. He's flexing for everybody there to show. I don't know what the back muscles are called because I don't have any that are apparent. But he's got them and he's showing them. Kscape is way too expensive for the average person. They market for the rich. Lol. Great product though. I agree with that to a certain extent. It's definitely not the bargain basement, least expensive thing. I think for the enthusiast that's really hardcore into Zappiti, Zudu, NAS, and all that stuff, you end up spending an amount of money that could have gotten you into a used Clive Escape unit. So it's just what you like, right? There's room enough for all of us here, right? And I love all of these products. I love Zappitis and I love Zudus, and I don't know about Dunes. Maybe I love them. I don't have enough experience. I love the Clive Escapes. I love movies, right? I love home theater. So all of these things are awesome to me, right? And there's room for all of us, right? And I like that we can have a spirited discussion about what's best and what's not and that kind of stuff, right? It helps educate I was going to say bring us together, but sometimes it doesn't. All right. Mia says, Brycey, yes, for some. Just find a good used deal or work for an integrator and get a discount. Oh, see, Mia, you're talking my language. If you work for an integrator and get a discount, hook a brother up. I'm here. I love a deal. My email is everywhere. Giles@giles.org. If you guys out there have great deals, send it my way. And hey, speaking of deals, I am selling as Zappiti Audiocom, the Ace Edition, Audiocom something edition, Cinema Edition, Audiocom Cinema Edition. Anybody want one? I got one. It's up for sale. And the reason I say that is because of the next topic I'm going to talk about here. I also have a Zudu Z9X. I think that's the right model number for sale as well. So if anybody wants one of those, hit a brother up. I got one. I can hook you up. All right. Now, the last item that I want to talk about, which is a viable solution moving forward, is your Zappiti. right? Um, the cloud server stuff is going to stop working, but your player will still be there. And supposedly they're working on some kind of piece of software that you'll have to buy. All right, that's their goodbye kiss or whatever, right? They're all like, on the way out of the door, you know, here's some more money you need to spend if you want this box to be useful at all. But you will still be able to use your Zappiti to play your files, but you don't get all of the good cloud goodness, right? You don't get all the automatic artwork and all this curated kind of content. You're kind of stuck on your own, right? And I don't know how it's going to work, and I don't know how it's going to identify things. People say that the NAS, ripping NAS, is going to continue to work too. I find that kind of hard to believe, and I think at some point it's going to become a useless piece of junk other than to act as a regular NAS, right? It'll continue to be a NAS, right? But I think the ripping piece is probably going to become deprecated at some point and not very useful. But if you want to, you can continue to use your Zappiti until it breaks or it just doesn't have what you need it to have to do what you need it to. But it is an option out there. All right. So that is the landscape as I understand it today for what is available for folks that want to be able to continue down as a PD-like path or veer off into other paths as we have described them, so that you can continue watching content in your home theater. And to totally move away from home theater for a minute, if you haven't seen The Creator yet, go watch The Creator, watch it in the theater so that you can support the movie. It's awesome. I think it's a modern day classic. It's a masterpiece. Is it perfect? No, but I loved it. I thought it was absolutely amazing. It's mostly original content, not a franchise. That was absolutely beautiful. And on its budget, they absolutely made other big budget films look like amateur time, right? So definitely go watch that movie. It's so awesome. All right, final comments here before we close this thing off. If anybody has questions, please get those out here pretty quick so we can cover those off. All right, let's see. Oh, we saw that one already. Mia waited 7 years to get a good deal on a discontinued Strato. Nothing wrong with that. I love a deal. Jack says, Infuse isn't perfect, but if you already run a server and live in Apple, you need to try it. I think that is that is what I was able to gather from other folks as well today. All right, everybody. I think that is going to close us off for today. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, everybody, you folks that are watching right now, please push the subscribe button. That's how you can say thanks. Unless you hated this, then you could just send me a middle finger emoji and then I'll understand. But if you're not sending me the middle finger emoji, please hit the subscribe button and share this with your buddies. If you have a friend that is a Zappiti user and they find themselves lost in the world today, point them this way and these will be some options to help them get back on the path to watching content again. All right. Thanks, everybody. As always, see you guys in the next video.